Rockinitis.
I want to go to heaven, but I've been told the Rockinitis has got my soul. Been rocking and rolling till the break of dawn. Man, I wonder if my baby is still at home. Wonder if my baby is still at home.
Hi, cats and kittens. Welcome to Rockinitis. My name is Michael Willmore. And this time out on the show, it's going to be a blues show. And this is about a guy who's you've probably not heard of, but he is fantastic. A guy called ZuZu Bollin. And he's from Texas, and he only had two 78s out in the early 1950s, and then he was rediscovered in 1989 and did a rediscovery album. So his entire recorded legacy consists of two old 78s and one newish, if you could call it that, it's an oldie now, LP. That's it. And that doesn't add up to much of a recorded legacy. But ZuZu Bollin's contribution to the Texas blues shouldn't be overlooked. He's got a very strong T-Bone Walker influenced sound on the guitar, and you might detect actually a bit of a Chuck Berry influence in his guitar, but that's because Chuck Berry was highly influenced by T-Bone Walker. Now he has a little bit of a kind of a bilious sound in his voice. I guess you could almost say he has a bit of a T-Bone Walker sound, or maybe a little bit of Big Joe Turner, and maybe a little bit of Eddie Cleanhead Vincent. You know, he's kind of, he's just got that heavy, some would call it a Texas sound. And I just love the guy. His real name is A.D. Bollin. And he listened to everyone from Blind Lemon Jefferson to Leroy Carr to Big Joe Turner to Count Basie when he was coming of age. Here's his one and only CD, his one and only LP, actually the second issue of it. Originally it came out in 1989 on vinyl, and then ZuZu passed away. He died, so he never got to see the national release of his LP, which was reissued on the Antone record label in 1991. This is a great album from beginning to end, and it features a great, somewhat fluctuating band, different personnel on different tracks, but the core group is the same. Here's a picture of ZuZu's core group right here. And I think this is just an all-time classic. Let's hear another track from this LP, this CD, right now. This one is called Big Legs, and it's an old tune by Gene Phillips. And, you know, just to illustrate the difference between the way blacks approached popular song and the way that music was when I grew up, when I was forced to, you know, endure watching things like Lawrence Welk and the Perry Como show and the Andy Williams show and things like that, because that's what my family always put on the TV. Anyway, when I heard this the first time, for some reason it just popped into my head how absurd it would be if Perry Como in his comfortable cardigan would come on and sing, big legs, big legs, big legs is all I crave. Or Andy Williams or somebody singing a song like that. Nobody would understand what was going on. But when it's a guy like ZuZu Bollin singing a blues tune called Big Legs, we know it's because he approves of hefty women.
Big legs is all I crave. Big legs, big legs, big legs is all I crave. A big leg woman can make for me a slave. I got a stove in the kitchen, it cooks nice and brown. I need a big leg woman, turn my damper down. Big leg, build up from the ground. A big leg woman, make me turn my damper down.
He picked up his nickname from another Texas artist. He was in the band of a guy called E.X. Brooks, and he got a reputation as having a bit of a sweet tooth. And he particularly favored a brand of ginger snap cookies called ZuZu's that were featured in a movie called It's a Wonderful Life. So they were a well-known brand of biscuits out at the time, and he was always munching on them. So other guys in the band started referring to him as ZuZu. And he did a stint with Percy Mayfield, and he returned playing around Dallas, Texas. That was his home base in the early days. And in late 1951, he made his recording debut for Bob Sutton's Torch record label. ZuZu Bollin was an American blues guitarist from Frisco, Texas. And originally he was named A.D. Bollin. And actually, there's a little item here I'll show you, which I got off eBay, you know, the auction thing on the internet. And so somebody is auctioning off an old tin of ZuZu ginger snap cookies on here, and I'll let you have a look at that. And that's where ZuZu Bollin got his nickname. And he only did 2 old 78s back in 1951 and 1952, and he was thought to be dead until he was rediscovered in 1988, living in Dallas, by Dallas Blues Society Records founder Chuck Nevitt. And Chuck Nevitt gathered together a top-notch band and produced ZuZu Bollin's first full-length LP called Texas Blues Man in 1989 as the debut release on the Dallas Blues Society record label. And it came out on vinyl originally. And this record was then sold to Anton's Records a couple of years later, and Anton's released it as a CD with a different cover. And this recording augmented ZuZu's only two known recordings, two old 78 records recorded in 1951 and 1952 on the Dallas-based Torch record label.
Baby, make it. On me, baby, but I'll get you, just wait and see. You've been driving on me, baby.
Now, when I was just a young guy, we used to go to a lot of rock concerts and hang out and do a lot of musical stuff and so forth. Anyway, one of the things that happened with us in the early days was we made friends with this English couple who were kind of new in town, and we were kind of showing them around town and showing them where the action was and all this kind of stuff. Anyway, they were called Don and Sue. And when Don found out that, and Sue too, when they found out that I was into blues and liked a lot of blues-based stuff, they started telling me about this supplement that was in the London Times or something or other. They had a Sunday section, a color supplement in the newspaper over there, one of the big major newspapers, probably the Sunday Times or something. And it was called The Observer, or in the way they always described it was The Observer. So anyway, this supplement was highly thought of in England, and the English have always been rather scholarly in their approach to music, and I quite like that. They've always been kind of had a historical approach to music, whereas over here we have kind of a hysterical approach to music. Anyway, The Observer, they were always telling me about this fabulous issue of The Observer that came out in 1969, and they said, I must contact my friend Thick Jack. They had names for all their friends. Anyway, this one guy, one of the women in the group was called Frantic. And this guy was called Thick Jack. And he had a copy of this Observer, so they went and got it off him and presented it to me, and I've treasured it ever since. This is it here, and it has just amazing, fabulous photos in it, a whole history of the blues, and it was written by Paul Oliver, and Paul Oliver had a book coming out, I think the week or so after this article in The Observer, called The Story of the Blues. This book right here. And this is a fabulous book, but like I say, the English are very scholarly in their approach, so some people might find it a little moldy fig, but it's got some great observations in it. And he wrote other books too, such as this book here called The Meaning of the Blues. Paul Oliver, one of the great scholars of the blues. And he wrote this article here in The Observer, and it has fabulous photos in it. The front cover, it says, "Before Black Power came blues power. In the long, hot summers of discontent, before the jet planes had overtaken the river boats, the American Negro poured his pent-up frustrations into the soulful sound of the blues. Its echoes are caught in the best of today's music, and its stars are recalled with growing awe and affection," by Paul Oliver. And it has fabulous photos in it. And here's the very first time that record collectors, blues collectors, were ever made aware of ZuZu Bollin at large, because his very first record, Why Don't You Eat Where You Slept Last Night, was pictured in this article in the Observer. There's always been a fascination in England with the Deep South, and the English are enamored with the myth of the Deep South. I know. I've been to England, and I spent many a time talking to them about it, because I hitchhiked through the southern states for 6 months or more way back then. And it shows his very first record, and it says, ZuZu Bollin made 4 titles for an obscure Dallas record label, the Torch label. Its name hinted at a new dynamism, as did Smash, Fire, Flame, Sun, Sensation, Fury, and Meteor. Others suggested a gambling spint like Chance, Aladdin, or the Chess label, or Fortune and Checker, for they emphasized authority. Labels like Chief, Aristocrat, Apollo, Duke, Crown, King, Queen, Regent. The aspirations and rising anger of the black masses appears to be reflected in these record labels. That's an English spin on the blues. Unfortunately, ZuZu Bollin passed away before he ever saw his one and only LP released on CD. It had just come out on vinyl, and he did a few important gigs and presented himself and his voice and guitar stylings to the blues world, and then he passed on, unfortunately, at the age of 68. Before his death in 1990, ZuZu made festival dates both in the States and over in Europe. So people got to see him. That's the important thing, before he died. And he left a great legacy, a great blues album, before he passed on.
Baby, make it. You slept last night. Why don't you eat before you slept last night? Get away from my door, else it's gonna be a fight. You've been trifling on me, baby. I'll get you, just wait and see. You've been trifling on me, baby. I'll get you, just wait and see.
Some of the pictures I have here are quite neat. This one here is of ZuZu's band, the core part of the band, and I'll let you look at it in a bit of a close-up. And also this one here he is at the record release party for the original vinyl version of the album. He didn't live long enough to see it reissued on CD. He died right after the album was issued, originally on vinyl. And anyway, this picture here I quite like. It's one of the gigs that ZuZu and his band originally played at back in the old days, and it says, the late Texas bluesman ZuZu Bollin played the grand opening for Wimpy's Famous Hamburgers in 1952. The ad can be found in the Dallas Express newspaper on microfilm at the Central Dallas Public Library. Wimpy's is located in West Dallas at 1802 Singleton, and it's still in its original location. So ZuZu's band played there as one of the many gigs they had in the early days. They only really gigged around for about a year, and then Ray Charles came through town, and Ray Charles, they were backing up Ray Charles as the warm-up act, and Ray Charles liked ZuZu's band so much that he stole a couple of the members out of the group. He took Leroy Cooper and David Fathead Newman out of ZuZu's group. And so ZuZu, when he did his second record, Stave and Chain, he had to record backed up by the Jimmy McCracklin combo because his band had been pilfered by Ray Charles. Anyway, I always loved David Fathead Newman, and I think David's first album in 1958, I think, is probably my all-time favorite jazz LP. It's called Fathead. Ray Charles presents David Fathead Newman. And this is just an unbelievable killer LP. I've listened to it probably 1,000 times, and I never, ever get tired of listening to it. And I think this would be definitely on my top 10 desert island must-have recordings to listen to under the palm trees. And the really cool thing is, David Fathead Newman rejoined, teamed up again with ZuZu Bollin after ZuZu was rediscovered. People thought he was dead, you see. I mean, he basically disappeared for close to 40 years, and people had been looking for him, and finally they came upon him. And he was running a laundry service or a dry cleaning business. He'd gone into the dry cleaning business, and that's how he was making a living, and that's where he was rediscovered. So when they rediscovered him again, they mentioned his old 278s that he had out in 1951 and 1952, and said that they wanted him to start recording again, and was he still playing? And he goes, not that much, but now that I know you want to record me again, I'm going to start practicing. So he got ready, and they put together a killer session group, including David Fathead Newman on a couple of cuts. And David Fathead Newman is pictured right beside ZuZu Bollin in this great old picture. He's standing with a white sweater on with his alto sax, standing right beside ZuZu Bollin in this great picture. He's standing to ZuZu's left. This is the picture here.
Kidney stew is fine. Oh, kidney stew is fine. You can save your money and keep your peace of mind.
You know, I'm reminded of that line in the Bob Dylan song. He could quote Dylan, you know, interminably, but that great line, Ma Rainey and Beethoven once unwrapped a bedroll. The blues got in bed with other forms of music. And, you know, once you open yourself to the musicality of the blues, there's a whole world out there.
I had a headlight, like a headlight on some train. Well, if I had a headlight, like a headlight on some train, you know I'd shine my light, baby, in cool Colorado Springs. Well, I'm sitting here wondering.
278s in the early 1950s, 1951 and 1952, and later, when he was rediscovered, a 1989 rediscovery vinyl album add up to not much of a recorded legacy, but ZuZu Bollin's contribution to the Texas blues legacy shouldn't be overlooked. He's got a very strong T-Bone Walker influenced guitar sound, and it typified post-war Lone Star blues guitar. And also there's a very strong Big Joe Turner, Eddie Cleanhead Vincent type sound in his vocalizing. He's got kind of a heavy, bilious quality, almost a blues shouter in a way. And David Fathead Newman rejoined ZuZu and played on his 1989 session, released on CD in 1991, and a redone version of Headlight Blues. ZuZu died in 1990, right after the album came out. And he died before it was reissued in 1991 on CD. My name is Michael Willmore. The program has been Rockinitis. This time it was a blues show. Hope you liked it. Rockinitis.
Oh, baby, baby, when I heard that beat, the Rockinitis just moved my feet. Yeah. To see what's wrong. He said, son, you've been rocking much too long. Oh, doctor, doctor, tell me what to do. He said, don't stop rocking, son, till you are through. He said, doctor, doctor, what's the matter with me? He said the Rockinitis won't let you be.